Thank you, everybody, and thank you for my birthday wishes. I wasn't going to bring that up, but since you've already said happy birthday, I'll tell you another kind of personal story with Toy Sensei. Right now, I'm celebrating my 54th year. Those of you who know me realize that's not true. I'm actually 66 today. But Toy Sensei, when he became 60, he said, from now on, I'm taking a year off each year. So 6 minus 60 is 54. I think that's nice since I was born in 54. But yeah, Toy Sensei kept that up. When he turned 60, he just didn't like the sound of it. So each year he became 59, 58, 57, and so on. Oh, speaking of dates, I wanted to clarify. I was going through a ton of information, materials in preparation for our talk today, and I ran across a detail where I need to correct myself. I've mentioned a couple of times that Toy Sensei was like 12 or 13 when his father did the ceremonious bucket of cold water that really, I think the first time I referenced it was when we were talking about getting up. But in reality, Toy Sensei was 9 or 10. So I just have to stand corrected anytime I give you an error and I realize it, I'm just going to change it. And that makes more sense. It's a little old to be dousing a 13-year-old, but 9, 10, that makes sense. Okay, each time I've tried to talk about how did we get here, but now that we've been following this thread, I think it would take me too long. So I'll just summarize. We're in the second session of a 4-part series. And I'd like to pick up where we left off last time and simply summarize briefly about Saikontan. First, my mailbox. Thank you very much. People are writing in like nobody's business, and I love it. I love the interaction. The largest question that I had this time was about translations. So apparently after the last class, many of you went straight to Google, Googled Saikontan and realized, oh my God, there's all these different versions. If you do as Mayumi did, there's even more. There's like 20 some in Japan. There's reasons for that. There is no single authorized manuscript, historical manuscript. There are many. And some of the oldest and best preserved are actually in Taiwan. But in any event, the last time when I made some comments, there's an excellent introduction to Saikontan, and I think some of you have gone to this one by the translator is Wilson, The Roots of Wisdom. That's probably the first one that came up on your screen. The introductory essay is very good. He's a first-rate scholar. He's excellent in Japanese studies. But just my humble opinion, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get the text. It's very scholarly. It's my least favorite translation. But what we're doing here in this session is it's not about the book. You're going to read the book and gain something marvelous. I'm using the book as an opportunity for maybe you to understand a perspective that I can share of Toy Sensei, the person. And why he was inspired by this text, because the real things that we need to study is Toy Sensei's works and his teaching and his concepts. But this just helps you to understand the person. So in any event, this is popular. I think many of you have already ordered it based on my email. The one that I like was done in 1959, and it's by the translator is Xiao Zijiang. He actually was born in Guangzhou and studied at Sun Yat-sen University. This is mainland China, just north of Hong Kong. And he actually came to the United States for study. He spent some time at Harvard. He got an MBA from New York University. He's actually an economist. But he is also a translator of poetry. And while this isn't the all of the verses of Saikontan, it is by far my favorite translation and one that really mirrors more, I think, Toy Sensei's understanding of these epigrams. And in this second call, we're going to take some time to really go through, so you can get a feel for the poetry in Saikontan, and then we can build on it from that. So I talked a lot about the whole setup last time. This time we're going to spend some time actually looking with at some of the texts that I've selected. And Rich is going to help me to do that, so hopefully it will go smoothly. A summary from last week. I can say two main themes of Saikontan. Number one is simplicity. Toi Sensei loved that about it. It's clear, it's practical, it's simple. And if you think of Toi Sensei, the importance of kaisho, the importance of the basics, or the basics of the basics of the basics. You know, or Toi Sensei saying, you know, do less, be natural. These are completely harmonious with the spirit of these poems, and I hope you'll enjoy kind of walking through some of these today. The other big thing that we need to remember is that the hero, the triple sage, Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist of this text, the person who's the wise one, the superior person, Toi Sensei, it's almost as if when Toi Sensei was even young with pleurisy, I want to say he could almost palpably, his body would palpably resonate with these teachings. I don't know why, but that's why he committed it to memory, because it was so powerful to him. And what it suggested is that everyone in humanity, if you are alive, you can develop yourself over time to become such a sage. Toi Sensei believed it, but remember, he's laying in bed and he's kind of imagining his life as the hero of this story, but then he puts the book down, as I said last time, and he's still sick. He's not well. He can't actually do it, but he can say it. And his Tenshoku was discovered really at that time, where he said, not only am I going to start training, but if I can, I'm going to discover a way, principles. I'm going to discover universal principles that will apply for any person at any time in any culture. So he was clear, I don't want to promote any ism, whether it's Confucianism or Buddhism or Taoism or Christianity or any ism. Toi Sensei believed, as is echoed in the Saikontan, that there are universal principles, and that if he could discover them and teach others, that would be a life very meaningful for him. And that's exactly what he did. So the beauty of that is that I often talk about that he always taught me to be positive and grateful. Well, that starts with Saikontan, because the gift of your just waking up, just being alive, that's enough to be grateful. You wake up, your heart's beating, your senses are there, you have your health, and it's like, okay, grateful. And then positive, because you have a choice. Because if you apply yourself and you actually follow the principles that he's developed for us, then he's saying you can tap an infinite potential. That potential is described in Saikontan. And Toi Sensei would quote this all the time. He'd say, don't stand like a beggar at the gate and not realize that there is a treasure before you if you only apply yourself. And Toi Sensei believed that he had discovered a path, that the universe, as I read to you last week, actually gave him this path. And to me, the beauty of it and the power of it is that it doesn't depend on culture. It doesn't depend on language. It does depend on good teachers that can help you to experience the difference between unifying your mind and body and not unifying your mind and body. So last little piece of setup then, just to remember from last time, I took you through kind of my going to Hawaii in 1976. And I went there because I was interested in personal development. I'd been a ski racer. I started studying Ki Aikido. I started following Toi Sensei up and down the West Coast during his seminars. I ended up taking a lot of his ukemi and developing a relationship enough that when he suddenly sees me in the Palama Dojo in Honolulu, he's like, whoa, what's up with that? Because how do you go from ski racer? And then I told him I'm interested in personal development, and this whole idea that you're stronger, relaxed, I know for a fact is true as a ski racer. But I was looking for how to do it, like how to do it from in my whole life, because that's what Toi Sensei was talking about. And so I went to the University of Hawaii, largely because I knew that I could train with him there and go to school at the University of Hawaii at the same time. But the premium was to be able to gain more access to him. In fact, my advisors, my undergraduate advisors, had encouraged me to go to Yale. And I got into Yale, to the Divinity School in the program of world religions. I'd actually sent in my deposit. And there I was reading Toi Sensei's book that he wrote in 1966 called Aikido in Daily Life, the precursor to Ki in Daily Life. And in it is a little story that I remember very clearly. There's a story of like a giant cast iron bell, something like that. Well, there is such a bell, I realized, actually in Moscow, near the Kremlin, that Igor Ostromov Sensei has taken me to a couple times. It's this giant, giant bell. So imagine in this story, Toi Sensei's writing is that the size of this bell, it's so huge, the space in it is so huge that it just gives you the impression that something really large can come out of this thing. But if you only have a little hammer, and it's a bell, you know, that large, like a house, and you just hit it with the hammer, it's going to just make a sound as though you're hitting a railroad tie. But suppose you have a sledgehammer, and now you can go wham! Well, you're going to get a big, big sound. And what Toi Sensei said is when you first start Aikido, it's like you have a little hammer. You have no idea what is this infinite potential that comes out of Saikontan, by the way. But if you've been training for some time, you should be able to realize what is the real depth and the profound nature of this training and teaching. And that was resonating with me. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's true. I know this is huge. I know it's bigger than I can possibly understand right now. And if I go to New Haven, Connecticut, to Yale, and I stop training with Toi Sensei, that would be a huge mistake. That's not what I want to do. So at the last minute, I contacted the University of Hawaii philosophy department, not divinity school. And I recognized, wow, if I could just get in, but it's philosophy, not theology. Anyway, I ended up getting in, and Toi Sensei was just kind of blown away by that. And then that continued, as I said, for years in Honolulu, and then going to live with Toi Sensei as an uchideshi. So what I want to do is, at that time, I said he really helped me to develop this hermeneutic device, this interpretive device that is the 3 orders of body-mind awareness, or that's what it became. And I'm going to emphasize today just how incredibly simple it is. If you understand that our experience is intentional, it's always directed, then these 3 orders you're going to see in Saikontan are really, really helpful. Well, this was like training wheels for me to begin to develop this interpretive device to understand much more difficult texts written by Kobodai Shikukai, the founder of the Shingon Shu, and Dogen Kigen, the founder of the Soto Shu. So let's just get after it here. Rich, could you switch us to the slides, please? All right, so just as a review, I want you to take a good look at this and keep it in your head because, and we've talked about it for weeks now, but I want you to see the arrows represent that your consciousness is directed from subject to object. You're always perceiving something, that X. And daily life is like 3rd order experience. 2nd order experience is when we train, we can have multiple kinds of 2nd order experiences. Sometimes it's shujaku, like tunnel vision. Sometimes it's shuchu, you have an expanded view. But the idea is you're just focusing on one thing, Because if that particular X is dynamic, like breathing, like meditation, half, 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 like mandalas, mudras, we talked all about that, then that can serve as a vehicle to kind of fall into first order awareness. So I want you to be thinking, when Toy Sensei talks about relative thinking, it's always going to be a mode that's like second and third order awareness, because relative thinking automatically implies dualism, right? And when we talk about raceation, when we talk about a universal mind and other concepts that have to do with the goal, you'll see that first order awareness, there is no subject-object dichotomy, all right? There is no separation, only connection. So if you keep that in mind, let's go, keep going, Rich. Okay, here's the first one I selected. So let me just read it first. If left alone, waves on the water naturally calm down. The mirror reflects clearly if there is no smoke. Similarly, there is no need to try to make our mind clear. All you need to do is to remove the things which cloud it and make it dark. Then it's naturally pure. There is no need to try to force pleasure. If we remove the cause of suffering, we naturally experience joy. There's a lot here, but let me just, I'm choosing the first ones to just show you how this template can be very helpful. If left alone, waves on the water naturally calm down. That's a state of first order body-mind awareness. There are no waves, it's mirror-like. The mirror reflects clearly if there's no smoke. Sometimes it's called dust, sometimes shadows, sometimes smoke. But the point is every time you have a directional intention, there is the likelihood that your subconscious mind, your frame of reference, is adding something to your experience. So the idea is to eliminate that smoke, right? Which is a second and third order experience. Similarly, there's no need to try. Well, try is intending. Trying is third and second order for sure to make our mind clear. So it's saying don't do that. All you need to do is remove the things which cloud it. That would be second and third order intentional vectors need to fall away. Then it's naturally pure. Toy Sensei would say, this is our original and natural state. So there's no need to try to force, right? The principle of non-dissension, forcing is not going to get you anywhere. But if you can remove the cause of suffering, our personal attachments that show themselves in our second and third order ways of viewing the world, we need to get rid of all that. And when we can do that, we experience joy. That's a first order experience, and we don't have to do anything. We need to stop causing separation. Okay? If that's clear, let's go to the next one, and I'll just give you a different translation of the same passage so you can get a feel for the similarities. If no waves arrive, water will settle itself. Okay, that's first order again. If no shadows cross it, second and third order would be shadows, the mirror will naturally be bright, first order. Thus, the heart cannot be made intentionally pure. For if one avoids muddying elements, that would be second and third order subconscious attachments, purity will appear on its own, first order. Thus, pleasure should not necessarily be sought after, for if one but avoids those things which cause suffering, pleasure will exist on its own. First order. Okay, let's try another one. I like this one. Well, I like them all. but now you're beginning to get the idea of the epigram. They're poems with pictures. So most people can read a book with words. That's a third order thing, right? Words, right? Language. But not one without words. That would be first order. And they can play a lyre with strings, third order, but not one without strings, first order. How can they derive tranquil pleasure from a book or a lyre when they exercise their intelligence, third order, only on the material, shuchaku, too narrow, but not the spiritual aspect of things? So again, here it's even more particular. It's words, language, thinking too much, intelligence, all that is covering over. But if you just relax, allow yourself to experience or presence the world as it truly is, now you're approaching a first order mode, which is a much more intimate experience. Toi Sensei would say, where you are experiencing that you are the universe and the universe is you. Okay, let's try another. In every human heart, there's a book of truth. That's first order, raisation. It's there already if you stop covering it over. Okay, I'll say again. In every human heart, there's a book of truth, bound with worn out strings and torn bamboo papers. Those are the third order attachments that cover your first order experience. In every human heart, there's a symphony of nature. By the way, Toi Sensei calls that kaiden, the next rank above okuden. Drowned out by the sensual song and voluptuous dance. Okay, those are temptations, those are attachments like clouds, like dust, that cover over your original and natural self. They are subconscious attachments. What do? A man must sweep away all externals and search his inner being in order to experience joy. So you get rid of all that intentional thinking, second and third order, get rid of all those externals. You're in here, the world is out there, and instead do something different to allow yourself to experience joy, first order. Okay, next one. When the wind blows through the scattered bamboos, they do not hold its sound after it's gone. Sound familiar? This is one that I mentioned last week or the week before. When the wild, oh, by the way, this is the inspiration for the Shokushu Living Calmness. When the wild geese fly over the cold lake, it does not retain their shadows after they have passed. Retaining a shadow would be you're stuck on your second or third order experience. So the mind of the superior person, by the way, this is the triple sage, the Junsu who's become a Shensu, the enlightened one. The mind of this person begins to work only when an event occurs. Something comes up, like I showed up at the Palama Dojo. Toi Sensei's base is first order. And then it's like, oh, now I need to respond to something that just came, and he'll take appropriate action, but then immediately go back to first order. So, and it becomes void again when the matter ends. So these descriptions are descriptions of intentionality and how we get in our own way because of the way in which we carve up the world in this way. Okay, so I think those were rather obvious examples. So Rich, if we could go back to just the screen. So let me fill you in more on the personality of Toi Sensei and how he cares for his students, myself just being one of many. So I left Japan as Uchideshi, went straight to Harvard because my dissertation chairman, Thomas Patrick Kasoulas, accepted a position at Harvard as an Andrew W. Mellon Faculty Fellow in the Humanities. And he confided in me that fall and said, Ellen, his wife, and we're going to use this as an opportunity to look for a different position. It's like very confidential from the University of Hawaii, because he and his family wanted to move back to the mainland. He had young children. He himself went to Yale. He was from, Ellen was from the New England area. And so I immediately, if he got a job there, which he would, he was like brilliant, and he did. If I wanted him to continue to be my dissertation chairman, I needed to get myself immediately to Cambridge, to Harvard, and finish my dissertation while he was still technically a professor at the University of Hawaii who could bestow upon me my doctorate. So this came out of the blue. Toi Sensei was totally supportive because he knew Dr. Kasoulas. I'd introduced him previously in Honolulu. So I go to Harvard, I write, I finish, I use the 3 orders, and received my degree that summer. What did I do? I was invited to teach at the Aspen Snowmass Academy of Martial Arts by Tom Crum, who was a student of Rod Kobayashi in Los Angeles. And actually, Kobayashi Sensei and Tom had actually hosted Toi Sensei once in Aspen, Colorado. Well, I was going to Aspen to teach like a martial arts camp. There was like Danny Inosanto, Bruce Lee's successor, Bob Dugan from Hapkido, Hwarangdo, top people, and Marshall Ho from Tai Chi, just top people. So I was honored to go there and represent Aikido. Well, one of my students was the sheriff of Pitkin County. And he said, I want to hire you. Now think of me, ski racer, Aspen, I'd just been living, right? He was like, oh, really? Talk to me about that. Yeah, I want you to teach. I would like all of my deputies to become Shodan in Shinshin Totsu Aikido. He says, there's one catch. I said, what's that? I don't have a training budget to hire you to do that. So you're going to have to be a regular police officer. And I was like, well, that's cool. Because I was thinking, I don't want to just say it. I want to do it. I was young. I'm like, all right, teaching police officers, being a police officer myself, this is cool. Doing it in Aspen. And he actually created a schedule so I could ski every day and still do all this. So that was fantastic. Okay, and Toi Sensei he was excited about that. He loved that. Law enforcement, when he first came to Hawaii, as you know, Suzuki Sensei, it was like law enforcement was a big part of his early, training people. Same thing in California. Ben Sekishiro from San Diego was a detective. And in fact, my teacher in Idaho was a former police officer in San Diego with Ben Sekishiro, and then he moved to Idaho, ran for sheriff, and he was my Aikido teacher as an undergraduate. Anyway, I'm going down a wormhole here, sorry. Let's see, where was I? Okay, at this time, there's this Japanese miracle, right? Japan is the size of Montana with over 50% of the gross national product of the United States. And at the time, it was the 2nd largest economy in the world. Size of Montana. Why? Because they do manufacturing all over the world. Okay, the growth, there were these famous best-selling books. Theory Z, The Art of Japanese Management. Everyone wanted to know about Kaizen and the Toyota production method, lean manufacturing. So what happened was, and I won't go into the whole story, but I moved to Washington, D.C. I started something called the Far East Fact Sheet because I recognized that these business books written by 2 Harvard business professors, in my humble opinion, they didn't understand it at all. They didn't understand the culture and the workforce in a company like Toyota. And they just thought, oh, we're just going to write all this stuff, study it for 2 weeks, walk around, take a tour, write a book. And I recognized this isn't right. So basically there was the world of business wanted to understand Japan. I just finished my doctorate. I thought I had something to contribute reading these books. So I moved to Washington where I could be of greater influence. And a consulting company said, David, stop the presses. We want to hire you full time. I said, what are you talking about? we want you to teach us about lean so we can, and we want you to help us to expand our consulting in the Pacific Rim, Japan, China, Southeast Asia. I said, but I didn't go to business school. No problem. Business is easy. Buy low, sell high, unless you're shorting the market. Profit is revenue less cost. Got to make a profit. Can't employ people. I'm like, okay, we'll teach you all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, all right. So I got to do all that. And Toy Sensei was really excited because he knew all about these books, the so-called economic miracle, how the whole world was trying to imitate Japanese ways of business. So again, he took tremendous interest. But something happened where I was working for the Alexander Proudfood Company, and I found myself in a situation where these companies were systematically laying off workers and shipping jobs overseas. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Once I recognized, I learned business consulting, but I basically said, I'm not doing this. It doesn't feel right. And later on, I started my own company to do it differently, but that's a different story too. So I said, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. So you know what? I'm going to go back and just do what I was trained for. I'm going to be a university professor and just do that and continue Aikido. Well, I had 3 different job opportunities, and Toy Sensei was really concerned that I was making a mistake going to Furman University. But I let him know that Furman actually was very progressive and had undergraduate requirements in non-Western studies. That is, in order to graduate with a liberal arts education, it should be liberating and you should study more than just Western culture. And this was at Furman before I ever got there. In fact, that's why they wanted to hire me. So I was like, okay, this is great. And I was able to go on a Fulbright fellowship to India with Furman's blessing before I started. Everything was going great. I started writing and publishing as academics do. And then in 1985-86, I received the same Andrew W. Mellon Faculty Fellowship in the Humanities at Harvard University that my mentor, Dr. Kasoulas, had. So Furman held my position. It was a very prestigious thing. I went to Harvard. And at Harvard, I was supposed to study with a very famous Buddhologist named Masatoshi Nagatomi. In fact, those of you who might be familiar with the Dalai Lama, one of his frequent translators and good friend is a man named Robert Thurman. Robert Thurman was a student of Nagatomi Sensei. But you probably know, do you know, what's her name? Uma Thurman, the actress? Yeah, that's Robert's daughter. Anyway, so I was supposed to do this Buddhology. So my office is in the Yenching Library, which happens to be right across the street from the Museum of Comparative Zoology. Long story made short, I ended up befriending 2 of the world's most famous biologists, Stephen Jay Gould and Edward O. Wilson. I ended up starting a book series on the biological basis of productive learning and behavior. It now has 37 volumes in it. And Toy Sensei was ecstatic about that too, because Toy Sensei was very interested in neurophysiology and something that I was working on that he learned more about because he would ask me so much, but it had to do with what's referred to as neoteny or pathomorphic morphology. You don't have to remember all that stuff, of course not. But what I want to say is he took a deep, abiding interest in the things that I was doing because, you know, as you can tell by the story, I'm jumping from this to this to this because my life was, I just want to do it, not just say it. And so Toy Sensei was always supportive, giving me the confidence to go and do these things that I had no business doing. Like, oh, you're going to be a police officer. Oh, you're going to be a business consultant. Oh, you're now going to like write all these books and stuff. Toy Sensei was like the second parent. I said that in Living with the Wind at Your Back. He was like a third parent. And he was very much a combination of my mother and my father. Anyway, I say all that to lead up to an important part here. In 1987, after Harvard, that started a 5-year period where Toy Sensei took me under his wing in a different way. So I'm telling a story on myself. He saw that I was extending ki, extended. And he recognized that maybe I needed a change. I needed to see something about myself that I didn't know. So from 1987, other than big seminars where, you know, I could go obviously in Japan and whatever and do Aikido, for 5 years, he taught me Kyatsuho from 1987 to 1992. So with this Harvard stuff and publishing, I was then like preparing another book, my next book, called Science and Comparative Philosophy, that I wrote with two co-authors, both Japanese, Shigenori Nagatomo from Temple University and Yuasa Yasuo from Tsukuba Daigaku in Japan. Yuasa Sensei was probably the most famous living Japanese philosopher. And so for me and Shig, who was a translator of many of his works, to write a book with him called Science and Comparative Philosophy. So the biology stuff was now affecting my thinking. And I was going to Japan all the time, not just for Aikido training, but in my academic life. And every time I would go and visit with Toi Sensei, and every time he would be teaching me Kyatsuho. Then we had and at the same time, in 1987, I said, Sensei, someone should write your biography. He said, and Senmu, the office manager, his wife, was sitting right there, and she said, yeah, why don't you do it? Pointing to me. And I was already thinking, well, that would be great. And so I said, okay, great, thank you. How should we do this? And we agreed that I would write up a whole series of questions, and I ended up giving them to Will Reed, who was living in Tokyo at the time, who was bilingual, who could conduct these interviews on my behalf in Japanese, and we recorded them all. Those are the 25 hours of recordings based on the questions that I had submitted. That book project morphed into more than just a biography, and so Will ended up doing that book, and I want to show you because many of you have it. Ki, A Road Anyone Can Walk. This was the book based on those interviews. But the reason why it morphed into a much bigger book, I mean, it's whatever it is, 400 and some pages, is because Will decided to draw upon many other Japanese books that were only in Japanese, and he could include that material in this much larger volume. And by the way, I wanted to mention it because there's a lot on Saikontan in there, and it's in English. So if you wanted to actually, you can go right to the index, look at Saikontan on that book, and you'll get a lot of good information. Okay, he did that because the grand opening of our new headquarters was in 1990. So it was a reason to make this book that Will ended up doing much larger. It included a lot of material on the Key Museum and all that stuff. Anyway, during those summers now, especially all summer, like 90, 91, 92, I wasn't just going because of academic conferences. I now had the ability to just live with Tohei Sensei at Kinosato in Tochigi, just when our headquarters was opening. And in the summers out there, there weren't, there were like 2 uchideshi. And so it was pretty empty. And Toi Sensei was there by himself much of the time. And so what did I do? I spent time with Toi Sensei for a whole summer just doing Kyatsuho. There was the Kyatsu Gakuen there. And pulling weeds. I tell people, what did you do? I pulled weeds, I helped maintenance at headquarters, and I learned Kyatsu, and I spent a lot of time with Toi Sensei, and he was incredibly generous. You know, there's no seminars there, so those of you who've been to headquarters, right? So I would eat, he'd invite me to his house. I remember Kaicho Sensei was young, but sometimes he would come from Tokyo, and there was a little restaurant just across the rice paddy, which is now a residential area. And we would go there, just Toi Sensei, Senmu, his wife, Shinichi Sensei, and myself. And it was incredible. What did we talk about though? We talked about Saikontan. So now I want to take it to a little bit different level, not yet rich, but I want to go through some more of these passages, but now I want to talk about Toi Sensei's actual teaching so you can see the seeds of these teachings in here. I'm looking at the clock. I know I need to speed up. So we all know when Toi Sensei would start a class, it's like he's going to give you his cosmology first. The universe is a limitless circle with a limitless radius. The universe is an infinite gathering of infinitely small particles. The universe is constantly changing and moving. In this next passage that I'll show you in just a second, you're going to see that whole cosmology. I'm going to lay it out there, but this is the kind of thing we would talk about. You're also going to see the difference between relative thinking and absolute thinking. You're also going to see another version of half, half, half. As I said, the universe is an infinite gathering of infinitely small particles. So Rich, this next passage, I think, was an inspiration for Toi Sensei's The Shokushu of the Definition of Ki. So we would talk about this. So let me read first. Since mountains, rivers, and the whole earth are but dust, what do you expect from the tiniest dust within dust? Since the flesh, the blood, the entire human body are but a shadow, what do you look for in a shadow cast by another shadow? Thus, without wisdom, what cannot have an enlightened mind? So first, since mountains, rivers, and the whole earth, in Toi Sensei's mind, just expand that. That's the universe. The universe is a limitless circle with a limitless radius. But it appears to us as dust. In other words, these things that appear to us in a certain way because of relative thinking appear that way because of our intentionality. You know, things appear to us because of the way our naked eye, our ear, we hear certain octaves, we smell not as good as a dog, we see but not as good as an eagle. So Toi Sensei would see this, you know, it's like the universe is limited, and then this condensed becomes yourself, and this condensed becomes your one point. This kind of half thinking is right here in this worldview expressed by the author of Saikontan. These shadows of shadows is relative thinking. If we're always looking at things through the lens of filters, through our subconscious mind, through projections that cause dust, smoke, shadows, these all represent things that we need to somehow free ourselves from. And then at the end, it says, thus, without wisdom, what cannot have an enlightened mind? Well, it's like at the definition of Ki. Thus, we understand the definition of Ki. But when Toi Sensei and I would talk about this, it's like, what do you mean, thus? I don't get it. And so, for example, the same phrase, when we would discuss it, instead of just saying, thus we understand the definition of Ki, it'd be something like this. When this immediate experience, that is Genjo, an experience from a first order perspective, when this immediate experience, or we would talk about the notion of Junsui Keiken. This is from a famous Japanese philosopher everyone knows because you have to study him to take the college entrance exams. His name was Nishida Kitaro. This idea of pure experience. These are well-known concepts. So Toi Sensei and I would talk about it, and he would like it. So this immediate experience of oneness with the universe, this first order mode, when it's fully realized, in other words, that's Toitsu, Shinshin Toitsu. Doesn't mean unify, doesn't mean coordinate. It means to realize, to experience for yourself, a kigatsuku. You know, a jiu is aha, you get it based on your own experience. When this happens, when you can actually experience it, then we can understand the true meaning of Ki. So we would talk about this, I can't tell you just how fulfilling it was to spend time and to be able to share ideas and this beautiful poetry that creates these pictures that I think, again, were palpable to Toi Sensei even when he was sick. In other words, I think he was experiencing his connection with the key of the universe before he had a vocabulary to understand it, because he was just mesmerized by the power and the wisdom of Saikontan. Okay, I'm going to go more quickly, Rich. So let's just throw up the next slide. This next one were the seeds of things like Fudoshin, or the unity of calm and action, or the difference between living calmness and dead calmness. So just take a look at it. The calmness which you find at rest is not true calmness. That's dead calmness. Only the calmness which you find in action is genuine. That's living calmness. That's Fudoshin. That's the unity of calm and action. Only the calmness which you find in action is genuine. Similarly, the mind of peace which you find in retirement is not true peace of mind. Only the peace of mind which you find in the midst of struggle is true peace of mind. So when Toi Sensei talks about this feeling of living calmness, it's like you're ready. It's like you're ready, like Randodi's coming at you. You're calm, you're stable, but you're not at all collapsed. And this kind of poem, I'll give you another translation real quickly, Rich. Same one. The peace that comes from peaceful surroundings is not true peace, right? That's easy. That's like if you go on retreat, of course you can relax. The hard thing is go on retreat, learn how to relax, and then bring it back to daily life. Right? Only the peace in the midst of activity is found the true sphere of one's original nature, first order. The pleasure that comes from pleasurable surroundings is not true pleasure. Only the pleasure obtained in the midst of suffering can one see true movements of the mind. Okay, next one, Rich. I'm looking at the clock. I'm trying to go faster. This one has a ton in it. So let me explain. We used to talk about each kukai. Each kukai, as you know, Masogi, each ku, that's 19. It's like the society of 19. Well, where does that come from? It comes from Yamo Kateshu. Remember, his student who founded the Ichikukai was a student of Yamo Kateshu. He was actually elderly when Toi Sensei first met him. The active Hino Sensei was the active sensei in the dojo. But Toi Sensei would say that the meaning of each ku one is that if you're alive and you just have one, you have the power of one. With training, with following your teacher, following what Toi Sensei believed is the treasure that he's given us, you through your discipline, effort, patience, discipline, training, you can get the other power of 9 to get 10. So the symbolism of that is actually Yamo Kateshu died July 19th, 1888. And so his students kind of celebrated the number 19 because that's the day he died. What's going to blow you away is Toi Sensei died on May 19th, 2011. So both Yamo Kateshu and Toi Sensei died on the 19th, and each kukai means 19. And what it means, if you have one, you can get the power of 10 through your training. So for example, manure worms are dirty. Okay, there's 1. Yet they transform themselves into cicadas. There's 9, which drink the dew in the autumn wind. Decayed grasses are not bright. There's a 1. But they give birth to glowworms. There's a 9, whose luster matches the summer moon. Hence, we know that cleanliness comes from filth and brilliance from gloom. Remember, Toi Sensei always says, which is true, plus or minus, good or bad, right or wrong, north or south, male or female, pleasure or suffering, cleanliness or filth, brilliance or gloom. And he would say both are true because they're part of the relative world. What you have to do is you must choose. So if you choose wisely, you follow your tenshoku, you extend ki, you follow the principles, you can turn a 1 into a 9, but it's going to require effort. Okay, almost done. I want to leave you with 2 more quick points, and I apologize that it's taken me so long. Rich, can we have the next slide, please? I'm failing on this miserably, but I was going to have this as the concluding slide, because this is what we're doing. The world is in flux, and we're all going through something different. And so I decided to choose this particular passage from Saikontan. If a family can maintain the way of Buddha, they express truth in their daily life. They show sincerity and get along well with one another. With smiling faces and peaceful conversations, parents, children, siblings live as one and fully understand one another. This has 10,000 times the value of any difficult meditation or spiritual practice. In other words, Toi Sensei was interested in ki in daily life. He was very practical. He wanted to help people improve the quality of their life. He wasn't looking to make everyone an enlightened soul. That could be the case for a few people that really want to dedicate themselves, but enlightenment is something you already have if you just get out of your own way. So again, you'd think this might be simple, but here we are. I know in the Shaner household, we've got 6 people, and it's different than just Ileana and myself. And so I read this and I went, you know, David, you can do better. You can do better. You have to be able to do it, not just say it. And that includes living harmoniously with your family, serving others, and doing the best you can. I was going to conclude there, but I wanted to have a fun ending. And I wanted to tip my hat to Toi Sensei's son, Kaicho Shinichi Tohei Sensei. So let me show you one more passage. Let me read it first. When you are one with the universe, ki flows naturally. When ki flows, you can use your mind freely. When ki extends, new ki comes. When ki flows and you are connected, you get a lot of information. This passage does not come from Saikontan. It comes from my notes of Kaicho Shinichi Tohei Sensei teaching the last couple of years. He taught this in South Carolina in 2018. He taught it in Las Vegas in 2019. And just last week, Matthew in Japan, who is now participating in instructors classes there, said he showed me Kaicho Sensei's slides in Japanese, and I was like, oh, that's what he taught in Las Vegas. But what I want to say is, what a beautiful thing that our masterful leader, our brilliant teacher, Shinichi Tohei Sensei, these statements, which were helping to teach people advanced ki testing, like the idea is you get a lot of information when you have to be much more calm than the person taking the test. And so he was teaching us in this kind of syllogism, when you're one with the universe, ki flows naturally. So in other words, stop causing separation, stop getting stuck, stop your relative thinking. When ki flows, you can use your mind freely. He says that all the time. It's called being not stuck. When ki extends, new ki comes in. Yes, because the universe is in flux. But this is Shinichi Sensei's way of describing a beautiful Saikontanism, I call them. But this is exactly right out of his teaching. And for those of you who were there at the seminar in South Carolina, both 15 and 18, or in Las Vegas last year. It's just straight out of it. And now think of the 5 principles to lead others. Number 1, extend key. Number 2, understand your partner's mind. Understand your partner's intentions. Put yourself in the place of your partner and perform with confidence. Well, Toi Sensei would always, how do you understand your partner's mind? You have to be in a first order, non-thetic, get out of relative thinking mindset. And when you do, your mind becomes much more like a mirror, and you can see very clearly whether the person that's taking your Shoden, Chuden, Joden test, whether their mind is moving or not. You just have to get out of your own way. So I'm sorry that I've just taken 55 minutes. I knew I had a lot to prepare, but I hope you enjoyed this. I just wanted to give you a taste of the power of this text and how it influenced Toi Sensei. I kind of ended up at about, 1992 then. So all these conversations is when I was living with Toi Sensei in the summers there. But our journey with Saikontan continued a lot. And so in the next 2 sessions, I'll start with 1992, where we just left off after 5 years of Kyatsuho training. And by the way, what he said is, I had a fighting mind. I was still too martial. I was, I also taught a lot of security people, police departments, Secret Service in Las Vegas, at Caesar's Palace, Treasure Island, the Mirage Casino. Basically, I would go out there and develop programs in arrest control for them 4 times a year. And I was doing a lot of that. And Toi Sensei knew that and he liked it, but I think he thought, you know what, I'm gonna help take you to the next level. Per our conversations before, he knew that my subconscious mind needed to change. And the way to get me out of being, my identity as being this martial artist, he said, you know what, I'm gonna teach you to be a healer. Because healers don't have a fighting mind, they just want to help. I cannot express my gratitude for Toi Sensei to take such a personal interest with my career and my own personal development, such that he would invest himself over a period of time until he felt that I had changed in some deeper way for the better. I don't even know, Rich, what do we do now that I've used up everyone's time? I'm so
well, Sensei, I guess that's serendipitous because there are no questions in the chat. However, that probably means that you'll be receiving your weekly dose of email.
My email.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I can only see one of the pages here, but I have to say, Dimitri, nice to see your smiling face there, my fellow academic. Olaf, you're the best, my man. Thank you for doing that translation. I know I'm looking around. Mike Stevens, thank you for joining us. Steve Wolf, always good to see your face. Hope all is well. Kirsten, I'm seeing Mayumi, thank you so much. Igor, there you are on the bottom. Thanks, my friend. Harold Sensei, thank you very much. I can't see the other screens, but probably an hour is enough. I look forward to continuing this journey. I hope it was helpful. I do really enjoy your questions via email. So if you have questions, then please send them, and maybe I can weave the answers in. If I have an answer, if I can't answer it, then I'll weave it in the next session. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
See you next week.